Good morning. Welcome to the Strelka Institute. Welcome to our friends at Binary District Conversation, part of the summer series on digital transformation. I am your guide this morning for the session. My name is David Rowan. I set up a magazine in the UK called Wired, which is about where the world is going. It's about the technologies, the designs, the business models empowering the future. And I've done a lot of thinking about digital transformation. I'm now writing a book. It's a search for innovation that's not the bullshit type of innovation around the world. And I'll be talking at 7 p.m. here about some of the lessons I'm seeing from my travels in 18 countries. But we're here today to talk about digital infrastructure and regulation of the digital economy. We're in a world of incredible opportunities, technologies from large-scale data analytics, machine learning and artificial intelligence, distributed networks and blockchains, sensors becoming ubiquitous. These are all going to affect everything from medicine to robots. Okay. Robotics in factories, in transportation. But the big question is how we regulate these emerging technologies, how they're integrated into the businesses and institutions of today, how we create the legal framework to ensure that we don't have monopolies who are abusing the positions, to ensure that there is fair market competition, to ensure that citizens' rights are respected. So this is part of the summer discussion program brought to you by Binary District and the Strelka Institute, a 3-day discussion club on digital economics, perspective of realization in Russia. And the goal is to help establish the conditions for the thriving digital economy that Russia is increasingly finding itself in. If you want to get involved in more of these presentations, discussions, go to binarydistrict.com to sign up for the rest of the program. There's 2 more free days looking at digital society, data security, new media. If you don't yet know Binary District, it's building a collaborative tech-based community based in Amsterdam, but through workshops and seminars and discussions like this in lots of places from London to Berlin to New York and soon in Singapore. And you must know the Strelka Institute. It's a fantastic bar with a great education organization attached to it. Non-governmental education institute for people with backgrounds in architecture, design, social sciences. And we're fortunate to have as our partner for the summer discussions Vostok, a technology project aiming at forming the basis of digital infrastructure for certification, for registration, for data tracking in business and in public administration. So our topic this morning for the next hour and a half is infrastructure and regulation. How to make a technological breakthrough and accelerate full digitization of the Russian economy. And the goal that we're all going to be working towards is coming up with recommendations for a new regulatory environment for emerging technologies and solutions that meet the needs of government, business, and citizens. And after me, at about 1 o'clock, there's another discussion. Nikolay, a columnist at Russia 24, moderating a session on regulation of the digital economies. And then back here at 7 p.m., I'm going to share some insights on what I'm seeing from companies, but also governments and how they're transforming themselves effectively. But I haven't introduced our esteemed panelists who are going to be talking about what kind of an information architecture digital society needs and who should be the main architects. Let me introduce them one by one. So next to me, Alexey Mamcho, tell us in a sentence what you're doing in the telco world.
Спасибо большое. Ну вот я справилась. Все-таки не зря в цифровой экономике работаю. Коллеги, добрый день. Меня зовут Алексей Мамчур, я представляю Ростелеком.
I represent company Rostelecom, which is a telecom company. I was invited today to talk about the national.
Я представляю здесь на самом деле
Present here the company Rostelecom in its basically two ways, not as the biggest key player on a Russian telecom market, but also as a center of competencies as it was defined by the governmental decree on informational and digital structure. That is actually the topic of our discussion today. So when I'm asked what I'm doing, informational infrastructure is, sounds very far away from the needs of people. So, for example, I'm dealing with smart cities as well. But without informational infrastructure, it is impossible to establish the services that we provide people today. So when David took the floor today, a lot of you took out your phones, posted the pictures on your Facebook or Instagram, you shared them. So what did you use for that? You needed, of course, telephone connection, you needed cloud services, informational infrastructure, which is all a part of this architecture. So these three key components is actually the elements of our national program that we are preparing according to the decree of our president. And of course, in Moscow, since I think that the majority of our audience today are Muscovites, I think digital services, well, not David, he's a guest to our country. So our services have become a daily routine. So the access to the internet is a very basic thing, just as, water supply, heat supply, energy supply, but that's not exactly so for the entire country, although the internet penetration rate is one of the fastest growing in the world. Thank you. Thanks to my company, of course. As for the projects that we are planning on developing and expanding our informational infrastructure, first and foremost, we provide basic needs and basic services that each Russian citizen should have by 2020 or 2025. We provide the connection of all educational institutions to the internet. We connect all hospitals or schools for rendering additional medical and educational services, and I believe that these services will be the key ones that are going to be developed. We are going to actually ante up on those, so we will develop new telecom services of the new generation. And of course, when David asked you what is required to make this digital leap, or what technologies are required, for me, digital economy is not just a knowledge economy or technology economy. For me, it's partnership economy, first and foremost. Because in my mind, a leader of this digital transformation are companies, not states or authorities. We are the business. We are the direct beneficiaries of this because we are trying to cut costs, so we are trying to increase efficiency, or we cut out the middlemen while increasing the efficiency of our business. But the level of investments that is required, it's so high, so exponentially high that not a single company can do it alone. Which is why a digital economy will require a change of our approach. Maybe straying away of this image of big evil corporations towards maybe establishing ecosystems of digital partnerships that will allow us to develop this infrastructure as a whole for the economy of the future. So the example of this is the establishment of 5G network. It's not a network where you see, for example, telecom towers of all mobile operators. One of the ideas of establishing such an infrastructure is establishment of a special operator, which on the basis of this operator, the services to end users are provided by 3, 4 or 5 providers based on SLA protocols. As for data storage, in order for you to post your pictures on the Instagram and Facebook, that's all clear. But what about data storage centers? We have a national program that will allow us to establish a huge data processing and storage centers across the entire country, because right now this market is, let's say, is crooked and twisted towards this overblown and overgrown infrastructure only in Moscow or St. Petersburg. But we will try to level out the playing field. This is why we are trying to collaborate with huge businesses. For example, 8 such data centers will be established in regional centers. They will be built as a framework of our shared investment program between Rostelecom company and Rosatom nuclear company, 2 corporate giants of Russia, and they will provide basic services on storing, on processing, on transferring data for both public sector, private sector, and for physical bodies. Moving towards the third part of my work, digital platforms, I have to say that not all companies think that digital platforms are parts of digital and informational infrastructure. Rostelecom is not exactly so. We actually see as one of the headliners of informational infrastructure in Russia. Maybe we don't provide services to end customers all the time, but we are huge and we are the key or central or integral player in providing such services, because I believe that other companies can provide a refined product, but what's our best, our suit is providing huge integrated projects for regional coverage. But of course we also aim to develop our informational infrastructure or data platforms. It's not exactly Uber per se or eBay or Yandex Market. These are just different types of platforms. These platforms allow you to work with a specific kind of data, so to speak. For example, these utilities that you may be able to use to create your own platform further on. For example, now one of the biggest volume of data that is stored in the entire world is the spatial data, and they require a special processing. For example, in the digital economy, there is a huge section of this national plan that is going to be developed to digital platforms that will tell us how we should process or treat this data. That will, of course, bring huge benefits and advantages to our economy in terms of developing, for example, agricultural sector or economic elements such as public services and utility services. So these things are priorities for activity of my company. That will be all. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Elisa.
Спасибо большое, Алиса.
We will have a wider discussion involving you, the audience, quite soon. But now to our second presenter. Sasha Ivanov is a well-known leading entrepreneur in the Moscow ecosystem. He's founder and CEO of the Waves platform, which says it's the fastest blockchain in the world, and now the Vostok project. Background as a theoretical physicist. Sasha, what are your insights?
Thank you, David. Спасибо всем.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming on this wonderful sunny afternoon. It is heartening that people are interested in listening our rambling about digital economy in one of the last days of summer. It shows that this subject is interesting not just for us, but for you as well. Because the thing is, digital elements and digital technology has been developed for the last few decades, but we haven't had much breakthroughs throughout this time frame. But here's the kicker. Now we are on the stage where all the technical developments that have been established for these decades that I've told you about, they are starting to join themselves into this synergetic ecosystem that will become the basis or a platform for technological breakthrough into new dimension. Because technologies a little bit are lagging behind, and we need some time for them to coordinate between each other. Now we are on the stage where the internet or the big data technology or AI or the technologies that have been developed for decades, they are entering the stage where they start to interact with each other and joining themselves into an entity that is changing the world. That's why we're talking about digital transformation. This is the subject that is quite maybe dry subject or dull, but it is very interesting because this will become the main catalyst of human development in the next century, I think. So that's why our interest in this is quite obvious. So for this, we should, of course, the technologies that are quintessential for this fifth generation of network that join all and unite all these scattered technologies such as big data, AI, quantum calculations or quantum computers, and they unite them or promise to unite them into some sort of cognitive entity. I'm talking, of course, about distributed registry technology or blockchain. I think this is the fifth element that will unite everything and indeed will allow us and these technologies to cooperate with each other and establish a new world order. A blockchain is a technology that will allow us to enter the next generation of the internet, because right now we're living in the Web 2.0 era that started, I think, 15 years ago, and it's still ongoing. But we need next generation internet. We need more centralized, we need more stable internet. The internet where robots can coexist with humans and do some functions. And without blockchain economy, it's impossible to do so. So that is why here, I believe a digital transformation and this concept, I think it appeared at the same time where blockchain technology, well, at least at the level of concept and understanding of what it is, that this is a new informational paradigm actually captured the interest of people. So that's why here it's not actually a surprise that the blockchain is becoming a catalyst of the changes that are happening around us right now. And these changes will happen within some platform decisions. We are moving towards platform structures, the synergy where we don't just have one technology that we use. We have, instead of that, several platforms that have, for example, a total sum of technologies that gives more as a sum than if we use them separately. And I should note that these platform solutions do not exist yet. They are not there yet. They are just starting to appear, and what we are doing here is actually the core of this concept. We are starting to launch these platform solutions that, using the blockchain technology, will provide business and public services some shared ecosystem for creating all the products that would require Web 3.0 with all the decentralization, with all the prerequisites, all the requirements. This is very interesting, where we are actually entering a new quality level, where this technological decentralization paradigm and paradigm of switching social consensus with technological consensus, we're actually switching some social mechanisms on the level of protocols or on the level of technologies, and this is just starting to come to a real world. It's just, refraining from prototype mode into actually live model. This is very interesting and vibrant topic, and it's going to be the main driver for the next decade. So let's discuss this.
An exciting vision.
Очень интересное видение.
Now to a man who is digitizing the city. Alexey Chukarin is deputy head of the Department of Information Technologies of the Moscow government, and he's going to make sure that in the future everything is so connected that you will have drones delivering your borscht and autonomous vehicles avoiding traffic jams. Tell us your vision, Alexey.
Thank you. Добрый день, уважаемые гости сегодняшнего мероприятия.
Good afternoon, dear guests. Thank you for coming for this wonderful event. I'm not going to reiterate all the previous speaker. Unfortunately, we are not sitting on the stage on the beach, but this is also kind of a beach because of the sunny weather. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening in our city in regards to digital transformation. Long time ago, it's almost a fairy tale. In 2011, we launched our pilot, I don't like this word, but still, national or state program of Moscow, Digital City it was called. This program didn't use such terms or digitalization or digital program or something that was very unknown for that time, but nonetheless, this year, esteemed organization, United Nations, actually thought and qualified Moscow as the leader of providing all the digital services. So what are digital services? These are digital protocols that are implemented basically on all levels, all institutions of municipal level and governmental level of Moscow. As Lewis Carroll wrote in Alice in Wonderland, in order to stay in one place you have to move forward, and in order to move forward a little bit you have to run like hell. So that's why we tried to do exactly that. We ran like hell. So a couple of years ago, among all the subjects of the Russian Federation, we were the first one to adopt our agenda and action plan of Smart City 2030. I also concur up to a point with the previous speakers, because in our digital strategy we put at its core not technologies or not solutions or not even platforms. At the core of our digital strategy were people. People was the end customer of all the services that we developed. That is developed by the city, while making you advanced user, or companies that are being integrators or innovators of these solutions, or not just for the citizens of Moscow, but also for tourists, for guests of our capital, or just for people that come to our city on a daily basis and they are creating this new, both digital and ordinary economy, I should say, because I'll reiterate, what is this digital essence? What is this digital element? It's just a new means of consumption. Let's take, for example, time of 20 years ago. Everybody lived in apartment blocks. Now we're doing exactly the same. And in 20 years' time, yes, we will also live in apartment blocks, but it will have new functions, such as Internet of Things or smart house. We use cars. We've been using them 20 years ago, and in 20 years from now, for example, means of delivery of our body from point A to point B will, of course, also stay. Of course, we all want to have some augmented reality, virtual reality, and all that. But still, we will, of course, need to have some means of physical transportation from point A to point B. And these digital elements will give us these additional incentives, but our emphasis on additional. Basically, everybody has been saying that a digital solution is basically a silver bullet for everything, and yes, this is all that we need. Now we're moving towards a brighter future. We've conquered all our challenges. All the problems are, all behind, but I should also emphasize that digital solutions and technologies is not an antidote for all this, and it's not means to an end. Digital technologies is an element of formation of social community that, if they want, they will use technologies such as blockchain, or for example technologies that will appear in 3 years of time, or for example neural net or Web 3 or 4.0 or something else entirely. Since these technologies are encompass and include and revolve around end customer, this concept of end customer still stays here. And now, as for the two questions that are actually in the topic of our discussion in regards to the infrastructure and legal regulation. As for infrastructure, I'll give you a small example. I've been living on the suburbs of Moscow, 2 kilometers from the ring road of Moscow. Not 20 kilometers away, but 2. And 2 telecom operators that are proudly claiming that they are the big 4 of Moscow, just 2 kilometers away from the ring road. My signal is very fragile. It's very weak, actually, from their telecom towers. So the issue of infrastructure is much more systematic and important than it seems to you from the first glance. We can develop various digital platforms of regional, national level, all you want. But until that time, when each citizen will get uncensored, indiscriminatory, and equal access to that infrastructure or to that connection, we can't talk proudly about some changes or shifts in economy. In our current strategy, again, we base at the core of digital documents over paper documents. So that's kind of cool, right? You don't have to carry all the documents in your pocket, for example, as your ID, driver's license, or I don't know, your license for your real estate, because everything is protected in digital space. But here's an asterisk. What will happen if I drive away from Moscow where the connection is weak and I will not be able to connect myself to digital papers and digital documents, and I should actually give a credit to Rostelecom company that is trying to provide this infrastructure of internet connection of all villages and cities and towns of Russia. Because of course in Moscow we don't have such a problem, but we can't imagine, just think about it, that millions of people in our country, they do know about the internet, I have no doubts, but they've never used it, not a single time. And that's millions of people. And with that, we're already developing some digital platform. That's kind of crazy, right? Of course, infrastructure is, I think, a key element for the access to these platforms. As for legal regulations, I have some pre-programmed bits for this because I don't want to overstep my boundaries. Fresh news, just fresh off the press, 10 minutes ago. Supreme Court wanted to ban Yandex video cam system or dash cam system because with the use of these dash cams, some people can inadvertently record some licensed copyright programs. And imagine, some key player, using his dash cam, he posted basically a leaked version of some show that has been posted on YouTube. And this is actually a pretext of actually a legal admission for blocking the entire service in the entire country. That's pretty cool, right? I think that's an overkill, to my mind. But of course, I'm going to talk about some different things, because Moscow never tried or strived for example, push all legal framework and say all is well, and then do something about it. For example, July this year, we adopted a law on public-private partnerships in digital technologies. It is a very necessary law because the entire country has been waiting for this, and we wished it to come true. But statistically speaking, only formalities that are actually encompassed in this. Maybe my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong. I think it has only 15 projects for the entire country with the cost of 20 billion rubles. I don't know if that's big or small sum of money. It's just that we've never done PPP of such scale. But within this framework of this partnership, only in Moscow, in one subject of Russian Federation, in 1 year, just 1 year, we are having, based on our service models, about, I think, tens of billions of rubles. But our operational infrastructure are built using the money of these big 4 corporations. And they are using a sum of money of 20 to 30 billion rubles. So, what is more accurate here? the right sum of money or the right use of technologies. So, of course, we are trying to move forward towards the right application, but we are not thinking about the equal, the right sum of money. I do hope that this monologue will serve as a groundwork for the discussion, and I hope that we will have some questions to other speakers. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Alexey.
Спасибо огромное, Алексей.
Dennis Nagy thinks a lot about regulation. He built a regulated financial investment boutique company that he sold to a Swiss private bank. He's now CEO at Dolphin, which is an investment firm that seeks to regulate finance but also help with wealth management. So he takes a particular view on the opportunities and risks. Dennis.
Hello.
Здрасте.
Я буду говорить по-английски.
I will speak English because I have several slides that I wanted to show to everybody, so they are in English, so that's why it will be easier for me.
A little bit about myself. So I'm Hungarian, but I grew up in Moscow, so I'm Russian by culture. I started my career here in banking, and in 2009 I moved to London to launch a wealth management brokerage and custody business. As David rightfully pointed out, I then sold it, and in 2013, with a team of like-minded partners, we launched what is now Dolphin. We started as a more or less traditional wealth management business, and then gradually transformed ourselves, and now we feel comfortable talking about such topics as bionic advice, about technology in wealth management. I'll explain you shortly why. In general, what we do, what is wealth management? We open investment accounts to individuals, to corporates, to banks, to investment funds, and we have all sorts of requests and demands from this continuously changing clientele. Generations come and go, and basically my presentation today is not related in any way or form to Russia. It's about broader subject, wealth management, global wealth management market, and what are the technologies that have an impact on it, what could be a winning model today, and who are the competitors, what is the competitive landscape, and share my views in terms of who might come first in this race. So what is wealth management? This is a huge market. Capgemini, that's an analytical firm, published a report, it does it every year, 2018 figures, $70 trillion. So that's a bunch of wealthy people, or mass affluent people, that controls an absolutely whopping amount of funds. Needless to say that any change in this market, any fluctuation in how they invest, what investment asset classes they put money into, why they choose this or that, has a tremendous impact on economies, industries, sectors, your lives, where money goes, basically. And technology now defines how it goes there. This is coupled with changing behavior. So big tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, all usual suspects, they introduced a very seamless user experience, and clients are getting used to it. Everybody is using either iPhone or Android devices, and you are all getting used to it. So there is an interesting thing happening. Retail clients, mass affluent clients, extremely wealthy clients, they are all demanding the same. They want more or less the same interface, the same level of connectivity, the same speed of reaction. In more or less retail industries like Amazon, we're now getting used to big data, where predictive analytics show us what we want to buy next without us understanding that, yeah, I actually want it. So the generations are getting used to that. and generations are changing. So according to the same Capgemini guys, each year there's a transfer, $1 trillion transfer of wealth from older to younger generations. And people demand new things, faster reactions, and that changing the landscape. On top of that, regulators, governments all over the world, they are not passive. They're changing the way industry works. In Europe, amazing place to do business, by the way, because they introduced what's called a MiFID, Markets in Financial Instruments Directive. This is a common regulatory standards. Basically, you can launch a firm in Portugal, you can launch a firm in the UK, doesn't matter. You're able to sell to Greece, France, Germany, etc. But this is a massive piece of regulation that keeps changing. And now we have a whole bunch of lawyers, compliance consultants, regulators that make their careers changing it. The MiFID II been introduced recently. MiFID II had a massive impact in terms of technological challenge to wealth managers. Now, just a little example, we now have to report each transaction. So anyone opens an account with Dolphin and wants to buy shares in Sberbank. I would need to report 65 fields of information that has your date in it, your date of birth, where you live, your tax number, everything. Imagine what a technological challenge that is to anyone. Payments Directive, a massive one, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. This is a regulation which interferes with the pace of technology aimed at protecting client data and so on, money laundering. In Asia, we see convergence towards Western standards. People are adopting suitability, money laundering standards and concepts, client protection standards. In the United States just basically imposes the way they want to do things around the world, and that has an impact on anyone. Our firm in the UK has to adopt what is called FATCA, and we have to make sure that we follow the guidelines of US regulators. Internationally, there's now common reporting standards. That's what allows people to basically they automatically disclosing information back to tax authorities in the country of origin for each individual investor. So this is an increasing burden. How can firms, wealth management industry cope with all of that? So there are a number of tools. To summarize, I think that's big data, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. So three main directions where we see now the convergence of technologies, and they will try to address all of these challenges. So data. People now using all sorts of platforms at the same time. APIs, basically that's the way how we can ensure connectivity, how we can ensure transfer of data from one platform to another. And that's not, it's not only important for when clients use one place for one service, another place for another. It's actually relevant for people that use services within one organization, because the amount of legacy infrastructure, legacy systems that have been built, they now need to connect all of that. And global banks, I don't know, UBS, French banks, German banks, they have, US banks, they have systems all over the world which are different and now need to connect. So API, that allows streamlining of this connectivity. Now we need client data analytics. If we are to provide what clients expect us, the promise of this new technological touch, we need to make sure that we understand who our clients are. We need to be able to crunch the data that they provide during onboarding stages when they open accounts, and we connect these data to what wealth management industry can offer them. Cloud, basic cloud computing, that changing the speed, the computing power, reduces the downtime for wealth management businesses. So all of that is required. It's not just desired, it's a must. Artificial intelligence. I would break it down in three main things. So, robotic process automation. So we need to make sure that within a lot of mundane tasks we see automation that relates to back office, that relates to middle office, to front office. That has a direct impact on wealth management businesses' profitability and also the speed with which clients receive their product. Machine learning, that allows us to evolve and provide new standards for asset allocation. So what is asset allocation? That's basically how you invest, what your portfolio consists of, equities, bonds, alternative investments, in what proportions. Now, the new technologies, artificial intelligence, would allow us to transform it into a much more human way of thinking about your investment process. You can call it risk budgeting. That's basically when, based on your preferences that we have access to, based on the data in your investment portfolios that we have access to, we can ask clients very simple questions, such as, how do you feel about oil? Do you want to know whether you're exposed to oil price risk or not? And the answer would be most probably yes. And then the how do you feel might result in a number of immediate options where clients can make a decision. So, yeah, I like it. I want more of it, so I buy more of oil risk. And it could be through equities, bonds, commodities, or no, I just sell. And then, if you have robotic process automation, you can immediately execute the order. So that's where you require complex logic, knowledge of the industry, but this is the promise cannot be underestimated. So immediate response to the user, or you can just, okay, let's hedge it a bit. That's where complex derivative instruments, but with a human touch, come in place. All of that can be delivered by human being or by a combination of human interaction and chatbots. So that's coming as well. Now, blockchain. I think that this could bring massive improvement to such parts of wealth management industry as clearing and settlement. So that could result in the evolution of the whole clearing system globally. At the moment, we have a number of monopolies, say Euroclear for settlement of OTC instruments. We have DTC in the US that clears US bonds and some equities. We have clearing houses for commodities, and these massive behemoths, they're monopolies in their areas, and they're centralized clearing houses, but it doesn't have to be like that. You pay money, they do not give access to money, so that's the need for a change is there. There are a lot of emerging markets, a lot of frontier markets that need access, better access, faster access, and you need to make sure that you can trust those systems. So blockchain, if applied correctly, would result in a massive enhancement of trust, bringing it to another level, coupled with a boost to disintermediation. So when you can avoid those big behemoths and actually deal with your counterparties directly, I think that could be a massive improvement. Alexander, you mentioned that there is a stage, we're now going through a stage where few prototypes are now being converted to the live solution. Unfortunately, in wealth management, we don't even see prototypes. So there have been a number of things that few big banks are trying to do in Singapore, elsewhere. This is not addressing key issues of the industries at the moment, in my opinion. But everyone recognizes the need for it. So anyone who is able to offer a solution, a comprehensive infrastructural solution to that would be the winner in one way or another. Now, to summarize, we see a number of forces that have an impact on wealth management businesses. So the client demand, as I explained, technology, and coming from big data, so big data is showing what's possible. Regulators, they're always there, and competition, everyone tries to implement this or another. There's now a term, fintech. I think fintech is a number of different things, payments, retail, wealth management, etc. But these new competitors, they're increasing the pace of development and demand. So how do you address this? What we think in Dolphin, as my personal opinion as well, is one of the winning propositions could be a combination. That's called Bionic Advisor, as the term that I would use. So it's a hybrid model between massively automated back-end, but on the front end you have human touch. You have a personal relationship with your advisor who is equipped by all the modern tools that have access to this automated process of coming up with ideas, suggestions, where clearing is automated, where reporting back to the client is happening seamlessly. However, more complex needs, such as tax advisory, where what wrapper to choose from, which mutual fund you have to put into which account of yours, this, I think, at the moment remains in this kind of mix field, tax, legal, knowledge, financial advisor, and people do not feel comfortable trusting all of their money to robot. They want to deal with an individual. So this is the client journey, very standard client journey, but in each and every step there's an opportunity for using technologies, in some more than another. Client profile, so how do you understand client needs? This is a perfect example where hybrid model will exist. So technology will be implemented, that will streamline the capture of information, but there would be a human judgment. Your advisor would need to ask you the right question. And this, interestingly enough, a huge, more than 50% of young generation, they actually want it. They want people to help them through a digital journey. Now, when developing a wealth strategy, that's where artificial intelligence comes most helpful. Execution, that's robotic process automation. That's where you want to reduce your dependency on human labor. Managing ongoing optimization, signals, again, artificial intelligence, data, combining this with client data, client profiles, when you know what clients do, what they think. Reporting, it is automated already to a large extent. We just need to bring reporting to another level. So, but everywhere the oversight is required. So it's in the middle, this Bionic Advisor, as we see it. So what it would ensure for clients? For clients, it would mean relevant interactions. So not about everything, small details, big things, but only about relevant things. If you're able to generate or make your system generate signals at the right point in time, that's where you get your call from your advisor, talking about oil, talking about your tax situation, talking about your inheritance planning. Now, that would mean a better, more comprehensive service closer to what big tech is offering. And for businesses, that would mean better retention, because if I'm a client and I have all my needs covered in one place, I would keep moving money to this one single, user-friendly, design-focused environment. So that would, in general, mean better user experience. For businesses, that's ability to actually make it personal. These generic offerings adjusted to the needs of clients, that would automate the ongoing engagements, that would lesser our costs, and that would mean that more time can be spent talking to clients. Regulation, again, all of the reporting, understanding of client data, that would mean a relief and reduction of operational risks. To sum up, in my opinion, one of the key success factors in this bionic wealth management model, the first and most important one is the support of human touch through technology, through digital means. I think that's very important for wealth management industry in particular. All other tools will ensure that you can make it personal, that you can adapt faster, you can respond quicker, you can provide complete, transparent, adequate information, make it accessible, and overall seamless user experience. So this is important. User experience is the key. At the moment, there are a number of competitors in wealth management industries that want to reinvent themselves or want to start competing. So this is my view of who the big names are. So existing big brands, I don't know, Barclays, UBS, Bank of New York, Sberbank, anyone. What they have is they have industry knowledge, and most importantly, they have their brands. These brands are worth a lot, and consumers trust those. But they have legacy infrastructure, they have legacy thinking, relaxed approach, they're always catching up with changes rather than inventing new stuff. Just give you an example. One major UK institution, I won't call the name, but they still use for major parts of their back office systems a language called Cobalt. There are very few people in the UK that can actually code using this language, so they're stuck. They can't move away, they can't redesign it, so they have to start building things on top. That's what I call legacy infrastructure. Big tech, they're very capable when it comes to technology. Consumers, funny enough, when they are being asked a question, would you trust Google or Amazon to manage your money? The answer is predominantly yes. So they do have the consumer recognition as well, but they have no industry knowledge compared to those established players, and they still have to go through these massive regulatory barriers to entries. And regulatory barriers, getting yourselves licensed, getting all necessary permission, that could take a long, long time. Now we see a new generation, what is called fintech. So they're very user-friendly, they're very pro-clients, they have this what's called design-based thinking, but they're very narrow. So there is TransferWise about payments for now, Revolut, payments, currency conversion. They're very narrow. When people, Nutmeg in the UK, wealth management on the fly, fully automated. People don't trust more than a few £1,000s. They want human touch. So then there are two other players. Existing business-to-business platforms, those that empower wealth management businesses, such as, well, until recently, Dolphin. These do not provide or do not have relationship with clients necessarily directly, but they give tools. So they can evolve around the needs of wealth management, but again, legacy systems, and they like direct client experience. And now, those people who have the client touch, they're too small. They don't have resources. So these are the competitive landscape. Who would win? I think none of those, unless like big brands probably have a lot of opportunities and resources, fintech a lot of ambition, but I think the winning combination would be M&A process within the sector. Big data buying into fintech, big brands teaming up with big tech or B2B platforms. So we will see a lot of interesting deals, a lot of consolidation, a lot of convergence of different ways to do business, direct to consumer, business to business, adopting new technologies, and we will see amazing next 5 years. So if you're an active investor in this area, I suggest you keep an eye on financial services sector, both liquid and illiquid, over the counter. That's going to be exciting. If you're a wealthy individual and have access to alternatives or private equity deals. I think it's up for grabs, so don't hesitate. And to summarize, so making a process digital, bringing wealth management to digital era will certainly help wealth management because it just meets client expectations, which are dictated by big tech. Investment in technology for wealth management is a must. How it's going to be done, we'll see. As I explained, there are a number of players that are competing with each other and they have their pros and cons. But that's coming, and this is unavoidable. Whoever can come up with new ideas, new prototypes, new solutions for consolidation, convergence of different technologies would be a winner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Comprehensive survey of how technology is going to change the way the wealthy manage their resources. But what about the role of governments in ensuring the economy in general is developing fast? So Nikolay Tsekhomsky is first deputy chairman on the board of VEB, the government-owned development bank in Russia. And one of the goals is to use the bank's resources to develop the Russian economy. He's got vast experience of this sector, has been on the board of Sberbank, has been chairman of Barclays. Nikolay, share some of your views on where government and the banking sector fit in creating the digital future.
Thank you, David. It's a great pleasure to be here. Alexey is right, saying that I feel more and more like at the beach. I think the beach starts with me. So that's why I would really like to my presentation as brief as possible and speak less about government and governance and speak more about infrastructure. And there's one key word that comes into mind, and it needs some discussion. The word disruption. Of course, digitalization on the one hand creates infrastructure. On the other hand, it really disrupts the systems. And here, I think when I have been listening to Denise, I have realized that there's this tremendous disruption happening in financial sector. And I honestly feel like the obsolete banker of the previous century. Sometimes I feel like I'm lost in the understanding of how I should correctly build financial institution, coming to realization that fortunately I have quasi-state status. I do not have to invest all of these complicated new derivatives and all kinds of financial instruments. So while I was preparing to the presentation, I looked into a few articles, and I really and there's one article that really attracted my attention about the future of this curious industry, which is mobility, car industry. And there's another curious thing that Dennis has also mentioned, that consumer expectations are changing, the expectations of the clients are changing. And if we take a look at the car construction industry, if 10 years ago clients were choosing driving experience, which is the quality trip from point A to point B, what will be my driving experience on my way from point A to point B? Today clients select more of a in-vehicle experience. They prefer in-vehicle experience, which is my feeling inside of the car. And today, 37% of the clients, to continue the discussion about brands, would prefer a car which would offer them the entire range of software solutions which could be in the car. And only only secondary is the appearance of the car and the velocity of the car, how fast the car goes to 100 miles per hour. So now people choose software over hardware when they pick a car. And this industry is now over $3.5 trillion. By 2013, the value of the industry will be over $6 trillion. So today, the software part of this industry is only 10%. By 2030, the income of the companies which operate in this industry will come to 50% in software. So software is the growth area. This is the part of the car which is not actually related to the physical properties of the car, yet it is of tremendous value. So now thinking again about the subject that Alexey has been talking about, again, the subject of infrastructure, what is essential for this kind of car is, again, the key. This is not something that I want. This is not a nice to have. This is not an expectation for this really conservative industry. But without infrastructure, even this industry will be out of market of selling cars. So this kind of disruption is happening not only... I'd rather correct myself. It is happening everywhere, in every industry. And if we speak about banking in particular, we have just heard a very detailed presentation about wealth management. But even if we speak about our project finance classical industry, and in project finance business, which our bank is doing, Vneshekonom Bank is doing, the Bank of State Development. We have been mentioning Web 3.0, Web 4.0. I have been shivering every time when we have been mentioning this. But we're doing investment into projects. What kind of disruption is happening to us, with us as bankers? We do not understand this industry 3.0 or 4.0. We do not understand how to finance with this industry. We do not what are their insurances. We do not understand what is the financial infrastructure to interact with this IT infrastructure. Of course, we do not need to invent a bicycle here. Of course, there's the experience of Silicon Valley, there's the industry of Israel or Singapore, and on and on. Nevertheless, today we are really behind in building the financial infrastructure that interacts with IT sector. If we speak with any project today, this infrastructure is a must. Any project financing is really dependent on two key factors, one of them being at the stage of investment, when we're just building up the project, is timing, the entire value, and quality. So any project is dependent on these three factors. Second domain is offtake. Who will be purchasing the result of production? Both of these parts today are strongly disrupted by IT infrastructure or IT transformation, which we're going through. Because if we speak about finalization of any project today, of course we could use, and our clients must use, a large spectrum of new technologies to be competitive. Meaning, of course, blockchain solutions, meaning AI, machine learning, and on and on. As far as implementation goes, we have a few concerns here. Because if we're not in an entirely conservative industry, when we finish I mean to say that we need to be sure that in 3 to 5 years, when we finalize our product will still be in demand, especially if it's a conservative industry. That is why we probably need some machine learning or AI even in banking here, specifically when we speak about governance, because today regulators must think one step ahead today. And unfortunately, that is mainly connected to large infrastructure projects. Today, if we're speaking about development of transport infrastructure and road constructions, highways, today, should we be thinking about the fact that we're going to be having driverless cars in 10 years if we're building the road today? And this is huge investment. Do we have to take into consideration the future of cars? Do we have to think about this today? And again, this is the road that we're going to be building in 5 to 6 years. Should we be considering wireless technologies in cars and trucks? Or this is somewhere very, very far ahead. We're talking about this, and we're still considering more conservative notions here, but this is a huge challenge for the state, which is investing into huge investment projects, because it's hard to explain and justify these investments unless you understand the technological background of it. So, summing up, I'd like to say that it is extremely important to communicate and interact here, so that traditional business and new business, new technologies interact, communicate, integrate new solutions, and of course at the center of it, and I would agree with Alexey here, in the end, human is in the center, his social protection. It's his new consumer properties that need to be satisfied. And this will be the starting point for development. So, if we're going to be having a close discussion, this is a challenge that we would need to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikolay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. So, I think there's a consensus that there's some exciting things that are going to be happening over the next 5 years or so. It's going to affect everything from hospitals to utilities to the way we move around the city. The big question is, do we leave this to the market, or to what extent government needs to be involved? So there's some strong entrepreneurial talent on here. I mean, Sasha, you're an entrepreneur who's doing things that are sometimes inconvenient to governments. Central banks don't have control over cryptocurrencies that they do over their fiat currencies. To what extent do you think it's inevitable that governments get involved in planning the infrastructure for all these opportunities?
I think that here, without the government, we won't be able to do anything, really. I wouldn't try to antagonize the government or the authorities, because it's also people that are working there. And you just have to find some common grounds with them instead, because there are a lot of promises to revolutionize everything in our lives. You know, blockchain, this redistributed registry, it doesn't actually have any sort of anarchic nature in itself. It's not even about chaos. It doesn't even promise to decentralize everything, really. We're just talking here about the fact that we are gaining a new structure that will be more coherent and harmonious. And on the current stage, of course, we can't imagine a world where there won't be central banks, because, of course, they will never refrain from their monetary policy, and not a single state will also not, relinquish their responsibilities, which is one of the biggest macroeconomical influence tools over the people. So I think in our lifetime we won't see Bitcoin as a main currency of our planet. I think it's impossible. But on the other hand, it's possible that, for example, there will be an issue of some centralized cryptocurrency, which is actually happening right now, for example, in Venezuela. But nonetheless, it is happening as we speak, and I think that actually we will see more of this technology in the future, because it will allow us to establish new toolkit for the government as well, because they will either establish new infrastructural fields, or, I don't know, since we are in Russia, a lot of people will understand and will relate to what I'm saying, because there are also some threats of, basically deactivating Russia from SWIFT banking system. And without going into some broader details of geopolitics here, it is clear because when we rely on this centralized infrastructure, it's wrong and it has to change. It's inevitable. And here the authority actually have some advantage of having slight decentralization, because they will not be as dependent from some global institutions, and the structures that they control will just be more coherent, more harmonious, more decentralized. They will have less middlemen, less opportunities for corruption, and on the greater level of the state, corruption is not acceptable, of course. And the system that we are promised to see to render corruption basically impossible on technological and practical level, because you can't steal money because you don't have technology to do so. This is very interesting, and I think that the initiatives will also go from the state as well. As for commercial systems or ecosystems, I think, of course, they have to be driven or promoted by private sector, and I don't really believe in some big PPP projects in spheres as big data or AR. I think that business should be the trailblazer here, because they have to provide some retail solutions that will be able to bring basically more profits to them, but more broader infrastructural solutions, for example, blockchain in state services, or, for example, I don't know, some state registries, such as, for example, real estate registries based on blockchain. Of course, there should be, evident advantage of state adopting this technology, or technologies that will bring more digital transformations. Of course, that will be interesting for them. So here, of course, we have to help them, and only in cooperation with the structures that we have, we can move forward. We can progress. We're not talking about revolution here per se. It's a revolution that has to happen quite swiftly, so swiftly that it will have to be a revolution. But I think it's more of an evolution than a revolution, because we all participate in it, and without the help of states, we won't be able to go far. So we have to cooperate and move forward.
So what do you want from the state? If you had a group of ministers in front of you, what would you ask from them?
Of course, we need some legislative framework on some aspects that are lagging behind, because of course technology is always ahead of the state, and state always have to, try to, catch up with them, because they don't come up with technologies. Other sectors do, so just the state is just adapting. So I think maybe we should have some state policies on blockchains regulation, because unfortunately Russia, so far, we are actually planning to adopt some sketchy law in regards to cryptocurrency. It was adopted actually, but I think it's going to be there's going to be some adjustments or amendments into it. So I want them to have more understanding of all the processes that are happening and their reflection in the legislation level, because that should happen so that it would not impede the progress of these technologies.
Alexey, is government a friend or a barrier to the emergence of these new networks?
It's an interesting question, because I've already give you the presentation on my stance on this, because we, along with the representatives of tens of thousands of private sectors, we've developed our our regional plan on developing the city of Moscow, and basically the core principle was that the Moscow is one single integrated interface for businesses and state alike, because the volume of investments in the development of basically any segment of economy is so big, is that regardless of over-bloated Moscow budget or corporate budget, as I've said, alone, and I reiterate my colleagues here, not a single player on the market will not be able to basically establish new paradigm or achieve a state where all end customers will get a guaranteed high quality services. A regional or a national authority doesn't have skills or knowledge, I'm sorry for this term, to sell these technologies. This is not our specialty, but we can use our maybe administrative or lobby resource in order to promote some services or opportunities for business or individuals, because business people, they know how to sell technologies, and I think it's the best approach is when we have services in a model of PPP, where business is responsible for client interface, regulators are responsible for back office, and at the same time they find their role and their place for technological companies, because business sometimes due to being understaffed to, for example, have its own research lab, because research in big companies, I don't know, maybe in Silicon Valley it can happen in a standalone basis, but our scientific institutions and corporations, they can only have some applied research, that is something that is related to the way they do business. But we have some good examples of triple win, where big business or maybe middle business, they have direct contact with the customer. Technological companies, for example, providers of technological solutions, they provide this big business with modern technologies, I don't know, you name it, blockchain or 5G. If you're interested about 5G, I'll give you a special comment on that. And state regulators or local regulators, they provide all the legal framework so that the activity in this, vertical chain of command of all participants would be both legal and, again, I reiterate, it's my motto, to be as comfortable for end customer as possible. Thank you.
So if the city government, as well as the central government, is getting involved in building the infrastructure. And it's going to be an infrastructure that involves a lot more automation, a lot more AI, a lot more tracking of the citizen. What safeguards do we need to put in place to make sure the citizens' rights are protected?
It's an interesting question. Let me start answering with the first part of your question. This question is about the future tense. But already now, we with our partner companies, we are building these infrastructures. Not all regions of Russia, but still in some of them. Both authorities and private companies are developing this infrastructure together, jointly. It's happening for one reason. It's just it costs less money. As for protecting the rights of the citizens, if we talk about infrastructure, then I admit that I don't see any big violations of citizens' rights. If, for example, a citizen would get in his smartphone or his house an opportunity to use this or that service. And I would even say about protecting rights of citizens more in a context of services as a whole, and the contents that is channeled through this infrastructure, through them. I usually give examples of this city, but I will give you an example of CCTV. For quite some time, we believe we've been using this CCTV technology quite efficiently. Only for the last year, we've had thousands of cases that we investigated with the use of CCTV materials. Of course, it is everybody is used to say that Big Brother, from the Orwellian future, is watching you. I wouldn't say that he's watching you. I don't think that we have the capacity for years and years to come to, watch everybody, and we don't see actually any sense in this. But our main task is, of course, providing safety and security for our citizens. And when we talk about both, all modern laws or federal laws about regulating works with personal and sensitive data, then, of course, indubitably, and also the laws that exist already, and the laws that will appear within the task force of digital infrastructure that will provide the entire chain of working between business and the state, considering the interests, of course, of our citizens first and foremost, linking the opportunities that we have and will have. So such regulations is happening on a public basis. We publicly discuss it, and we always expect active and proactive engagement of our citizens, so that, for example, God forbid, on the, say, Article 9, page 18, there was some, interesting clause that would be a loophole. No, of course, it's all public.
So, Alyssa, somebody is going to have to pay this huge investment. Is it going to be the telcos? Is it going to be the private sector? You talk about partnerships, but where do you see the billions of rubles coming from?
That's the question of the day, I think, that I'm asked on a daily basis. I think actually the program assumes financing both on the federal budget, state budget, that is right now is on consideration of a vice minister of Russia, and we are reviewing all the clauses. But one of the requirements that we are having is a co-financing requirement from the private sector. Since I can't speak on behalf of the entire private sector, I can only speak on behalf of Rostelecom, but indeed we do have a lot of projects that is actually underlying this plan. We will co-finance them. They are related to infrastructure of data storage, data processing, which we are leaders in, or establishing this traditional telecom system, and also in the sphere of establishing digital platforms that are aimed on the various conditions on modernization of state control, state management, or developing such things as a digital profile and ID of our citizens. We also are investing our own money in this. Or, for example, platform that we're planning to develop with the use of our means is the platform that is now called State Cloud Platform. That one of the services that it will have is when we're going to have complete digitalization of state sector and public sector, and using the capacities of data storage for the state purposes, that they will not be stored for example, some physical data centers. They will all be just stored in cloud. So this platform right now, we are considering using only our money. This is a partnership 100%. So for example, 5G infrastructure development, it's co-financing of our company, other telecom companies. For example, now we're co-investing in research activities because we understand, and spending money on expensive technology, we don't need to do this twice for each company. We try to share this burden and maximize the capacities together.
And I'll give this one to you, Nikolay. If we accept that there's huge investment that's going to be needed, and one of the roles of your bank is to direct the money in the right way, what do you need to happen to make sure that we make the most of these investment opportunities in the next 5 years?
Oh, sorry. Well, of course, I would actually concur with the previous speakers and the presentation of Dennis. It's a hybrid model of wealth management of both state level and private sector level. I believe that our role is to become accelerator of investments for other investment institutions, because for us, we see opportunity to take more risks, to open up new channels of debt and loans, and by this we incentivize other financial institutions to participate in the project. Because I believe that right now in our economy we have quite a lot of money in banking sector. They just have to be channeled through the right way. So here we are talking about maybe the role of a middleman. We're not talking about that this money should belong only to the state or only to the private sector, because this, of course, includes governmental resources. Of course, we need to make some smart solutions and smart products that will see monetization and will see revenue and profit in this, because it's not always evident, it's not always on the surface, it's not always so simple. And providing a service for free can also, lead to some huge monetization in one way or another. So here it is most important to adopt the initiative of smart finances, and it is very interesting to participate in the project for us.
So I want to invite people in the room. We have about 10 minutes. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, just indicate with your hand. And there is a microphone that will find you. So there's a lady there, and there's a gentleman in the front. And tell us who your question is for.
I welcome all the participants of the panelists. I have my question to Nikolay. I know that in your bank you have a blockchain department. So what task lies for this department, and do you have any results? I think your department has been functional for 1 year already. So are there any, outcomes from this? Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's not actually a year. It's much younger than 1 year, but yes, indeed, it's a platform for engagement of blockchain key stakeholders. We've launched some specific projects. I can't say about specific results, but you will hear about them in the nearest time. So, Web Innovations company is supervising this activity. This is our commercial foundation. But one of the directions of all this is what we talked about actually, is less focused on blockchain communities, but more about traditional financing of all the infrastructures. I'm sorry, I have to say sorry, but I have to run away. I have a plane to catch. So if I can, please apologize. Excuse me. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful discussion. And of course, Alexey, thanks to Moscow for being a leader from the point of view of digitalization of our country. This you are our flagship in this sense.
Thank you. Nikolay.
Спасибо, Николай.
And there's a question.
И есть еще один вопрос. Good afternoon. My name is Ramazanov Mahaj. I'm Vice President of National Logistics Association of Russia. I have a question to representative of digital economy. What is the means of development of this digital economy way? Are you going to be focused on some priority issues or by sectors of economy or some industries or maybe some objectives that will be posed by the state? So how is this platform is going to be developed? Again, by industries, by vectors of development, or I don't know. Maybe you have some different vision for this. Okay, I have to correct you. We are the representatives of Rostelecom company, not the digital economy company, but we are co-founder of this. But yes, we will be focusing on logistics and transportation, which is right now one of the basically main focuses, because we're thinking about whether it's going to make this national program or another national program. But again, our colleagues from Ministry of Transportation are actively participating in looking for the solutions of digitalization of the logistics. Digital platforms, of course, will be developed and established, and moreover, I know that we are about to establish another competency center. I think Russian Railways Company has already become one of the co-founders. I think this is wishful thinking. It's not actually a done deal. I'm sorry? I'm saying that they just have some intentions, but there are no some concrete actions. Why am I asking this question? Is because there is no official information on the website or anywhere else about some industrial associations or intentions of developing in this way. Well, participation of business, of course, is the main task that should be tackled with our colleagues right now. As for industrial visions, they are just developed much slower than some specific projects. That's why their pace of establishment is slower than ours. But on the other hand, we're talking about, I'm also responsible for the development of section that is related to smart cities in our country. We also have a section towards logistics and transportation. It will not be related to our logistics national plan. It will be more related to mobility and digitalization of public transport. So it's an economy of shared use. Yes, exactly. If you would like to participate in this work, I can give you my business card, and we'll be happy to have you in our discussion. Можете тогда продолжить беседу позже. Есть ли еще какой-нибудь вопрос?
So we're closing, and we're losing panelists by the minute. I'm going to leave you, everybody, with one final question. So we've accepted that we need huge investment in infrastructure. We've accepted that there's no avoiding the opportunities of this future, that transport, industrial automation, medicine is going to be transformed, not least the financial sector is going to be transformed. But it's going to be complicated creating the incentives that optimize the decision-making, the investment. So if each of you was the Minister for Infrastructure Planning, if each of you could come up with one suggestion to try and make sure we make the most out of this, what would your proposal be? And I'm going to start with my proposal. Because I travel a lot through the tech ecosystems, it seems to me that it's the highly motivated, crazy startup entrepreneurs that are building things that governments can't build. It's the SpaceX type companies that are doing what the NASA type government organizations haven't been doing. So I would propose create, using the tax system, create, using media, creating heroes, an incentive system which allows the private entrepreneurs to take the bold risks. Alyssa, you're now the minister.
Thank you, David.
So, in my mind, I think for our country, specifically speaking, the key solution would be to delegate all the responsibilities or as much as possible to private sector, because the more we delegate to them, the better. So, with my solution, I would make, some tracking mechanisms so that the role of business would grow in this initiative. Because, of course, the state has all officials, they're all very important, and they all have some wishes to, be prideful because he sees himself as the smartest man in the room. But the main task on establishing digital economy is to actually circumvent this pitfall, because business knows better, and it is very important to engage business in this idea.
Sasha, as well as running your fantastic, fast-growing platforms, you're now the minister. What would you do?
Может быть, я первый? Давайте я первый, тогда Саша после меня тогда. Ох, вы прямо подрываете нам наше заседание. Ну, конечно. I'm going to speak Russian this time. So, it seems to me that if one thing, just one thing, that is of maximum importance is predictability. Because the life cycle of state services, of course, is much longer than some legal body, physical body, or a business or an idea. And that's why the state and authorities are obliged to provide the ecosystem that is going to be more predictable. And this will be our key component. We have to develop more on that. We will build on that. So we don't need more incentives for more than that, because technologies, they give us enough. They give us enough reasons to be implemented. They increase the profitability of business, they attract new customers, they stimulate our profits, but we have certain problems with predictabilities. I'm not talking about Russia specifically, because I can give you lots of examples was UK after Brexit, of course. So predictability is the only thing that I would actually put as a main priority.
Thank you, Dennis. Sasha, you get the last word.
Slower. Thank you. Well, the only thing that I wanted to say is that I, of course, wanted to agree on the previous speakers, because the role of the state, and especially if we talk about Russia, I think the key component here is establishing the right conditions, because our main problem is the lack of entrepreneurial culture. There's a big problem with lack of initiatives in their implementation. Because in Russia, entrepreneurial culture of doing something on, all by yourself is not really developed, especially in high tech. And of course, the role of government here wouldn't be more in just giving some loans or debts, but more so in establishing infrastructure, of making other means of financing or raising funds for some commercial initiatives. For example, just as cryptocurrencies opened up new opportunities such as pack and sale or ICO. So the state should cultivate certain entrepreneurial acumen, because in Russia we have this weird situation where your entrepreneurial skills are mostly used in public sector instead of private sector, which is quite weird. So the biggest entrepreneurs of Russia are actually on a bankroll of public sector, which is again very strange. So we should take a page out of the book of Western world, because they have a very a powerhouse entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that Russia needs it very much, and also people need it a lot, because they have some tasks, they have some ideas, so the state should help them or not stomp them out. But now the state is now taking at best neutral position in regards to this, or a regulated that minimizes the risks and minimizes all the shared grounds and common understanding points. So here our legislative framework is kind of a contradictory to our entrepreneurial spirit and actually creates additional obstacles than facilitates anything. So if I were the Minister of Digital Economy, my main priority would be tearing down these barriers to implement technologies that can do so, because there is also an element of, authoritative vertical structure, because, the technologies that come now, including blockchain, it can also reshape the situation from the point of view of increasing the transparency of all the processes, both public and private. So the problem here is that we will be able to solve everything on technological level than social agreement or protocols. So that is why we have to tear down the barriers and incentivize people to do something. That's my opinion. Thank you.
In other words, we need more people like Sasha. Maybe there are one or two of you in the audience. We'll be back at 3 o'clock for a discussion about regulation of digital economies. And then at 7 p.m. here, I'll give a talk about some of the things I'm discovering from the world's most innovative organizations about how they are finding ways to transform their businesses. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us, but mostly thanks to our expert panels, thanks to Sasha and Alexey and Dennis and Nikolay and Alexey. Thank you.